The objective of this webinar is to provide GLOBE teachers with a first look at the new document connections between the GLOBE program and the NGSS. The primary audience for this webinar is most likely current GLOBE teachers and teachers planning to join GLOBE. This webinar may also be of interest to trainers and GLOBE partners. Our presenters are the three members of the project leadership team: Marcy Seavey from the Iowa Academy of Sciences, David Bydlowski from Wayne Ressa, and Kristen Wegner from the GLOBE program. This project was made possible through the support of an NSF grant. So basic instructions, some housekeeping about the webinar. You can listen by calling the phone number. It's in the chat box, and I'll put it back in a second. You cannot speak into the phone or internet connection. Everyone is muted except for Marcy and I. So the only way to communicate with us is through the chat box. But you can type any questions and comments into the chat box on the bottom left. And Marianne, yes, we are recording this presentation. This webinar and all of our NGSS webinars can be found under Professional Development Resources on the GLOBE homepage. And the final NGSS product can be found under Learning Standards option in the Teaching and Learning page. If you have any questions about that, you can chat in or type it in the box. What were you going to say, Marcy?
Maybe we'd wait a minute in case people wanted to go there right now.
Okay.
And that way, if anyone is having an issue with the audio, they could type in again too.
Great. Okay, the agenda for today. We will not take the time to present an overview of NGSS or the process we use to develop GLOBE's connection to NGSS. To learn more about NGSS, visit the Achieve website for the Next Generation Science Standards. Also, the National Science Teachers Association has several great NGSS webinars, and we suggest watching those if you are new to NGSS. Finally, all the pre-workshop webinar recordings for this project are still available on the GLOBE website. The pre-webinars provide an overview of the 7 conceptual shifts of NGSS and discussion of what those shifts mean for GLOBE. So today what we will look at is brief introduction to GLOBE, the brief project overview, look at the connections document, as well as have a discussion and answer any questions you may have. At any time, please feel free to type questions into the chat box. The GLOBE program was founded in 1995 as a partnership between scientists, teachers, and students around the world. Today, students in 112 countries use protocols designed by scientists, collect data about their local air, water, soil, land cover, and/or seasons, and then use the data to develop their own scientific investigations. GLOBE resources are freely available on the GLOBE program website, www.globe.gov. However, to ensure the accuracy of GLOBE data, a teacher must become GLOBE certified through participation in a GLOBE teacher workshop in order for her or his students to contribute data to the database. GLOBE resources include protocols, which are step-by-step instruction for collecting data, learning activities, which give students experience with concepts that they might need to understand and interpret their own data and build their own investigations, elementary GLOBE, a series of 5 children's books and 15 activities that connect GLOBE science concepts to literacy for lower elementary grade students. Additional activities and website resources, for example, the Earth System Science Post projects, developed new GLOBE activities and in some cases new protocols that build upon those, and that the teacher's guide and online GLOBE visualization tool that allows anyone to graph GLOBE data. For the purpose of this alignment project team, the team considered the teacher guide and elementary GLOBE resources first, and then supplementary and web resources second. In total, there were 214 GLOBE resources to consider.
Thank you, Kristen. We thought it was amazing that there's 214 different resources in GLOBE that our team reviewed. So in this slide, what we're doing is providing an overview of the phases of our project from team recruitment to the post-webinar dissemination of information. The major event of the project was a 2.5-day workshop that engaged 22 Globe community members in the development of the draft matches. Those community members participated in pre-webinars to set the stage and to get everyone on the same page with the next generation science standards. And then after the workshop, the draft connections that they created went through an internal review process and a 2-part external review or open review process. Okay. Between the teams and the review phases, there were more than 550 matches identified between a Globe resource and a next generation science standard student performance expectations. And now what we're going to do is look at some of the final products. So here is a macro level table. It shows which Globe investigation areas include matches for each of the next generation science standards disciplinary core ideas. And so in this table, the disciplinary core ideas are the rows and the Globe investigation areas are the columns. And then in the coordinates where they match, if there is a P, it means that there's at least one protocol that's been identified as appropriate for classroom instruction, preparing students to demonstrate mastery in at least one student performance expectation in that science area. And A means the same thing for the activities. This table is provided for every grade level, and it can be used to identify quickly which areas of NGSS have connections to Globe and which do not. These tables were received very positively in the public review, with several reviewers stating that this is where they would start to search for how to implement NGSS through Globe. One reviewer even said that this was all that she needed in order of details. Tell her which investigation area to concentrate on, and then she'd pick individual activities and protocols to use with her class. However, most of the reviewers wanted this and the student performance expectation level matches. So here's a look at a screenshot of a couple of the student performance expectation level matches. These matches are presented both by DCI, which is what's shown here, so disciplinary core idea, and by topic. Because it's likely that NGSS will be adopted by some states using the DCI arrangement and by other states using the topic arrangement. And we wanted to be sure that our final product was usable by all states. The DCI tables are organized by grade level and then DCI. Shown here are 2 kindergarten physical science student performance expectations. The first is matched to one of the Globe, elementary Globe picture books, 2 of its accompanying activities, and also the surface temperature protocol. All 4 of these resources could be used together, likely with some non-Globe activities, to prepare students to demonstrate that they can make observations to determine the effect of sunlight on the Earth's surface. On the other hand, the second student performance expectation shown in this screenshot, there were no connections made to Globe. You'll see here also that in the order of the elements in the table, the code for the student performance expectation is in the first column, and then the student performance expectation statement. We put just the statements, not the clarifying statements or any of the other text from the standards. Ideally, teachers will use the standards document along with this to plan their units or their activities. Then the next column is the Globe resource. and we provided information to help them find the GLOBE resource. So which investigation area the resource comes from, which source, or I'm sorry, what type of a resource it is, whether it's a GLOBE book, an activity, a protocol, a website resource, or something else. And then finally, the source. So elementary GLOBE comes from the elementary GLOBE binder or online, the GLOBE Teacher's Guide. Some activities are only on the GLOBE website, so you're able to go back to wherever the source is and find that activity. Ideally, we would have had hot links here built right into the PDF so that we could go to the activities. However, the hot links that we were using at the beginning of the project, some of them changed even before we got to our 2.5-day workshop, and some of them changed after. And so we were not able to integrate that into the PDF. Perhaps that can be something that will happen in the future. Here's another example from 5th grade of a student performance expectation with lots of matches. This SPE is very well covered in GLOBE. In fact, this is just the first of 3 pages of activities and protocols that could be used along in the classroom for instruction, preparing students to demonstrate mastery of this expectation. So a teacher could very easily select among these. There's no way a teacher would use all of these activities, but they could select among these, perhaps even place-based, make place-based selections to develop a complete GLOBE unit for this student performance expectation. The matches by topic are all of the same matches as in the DCI view. It's just a different organization. And so here's an example of GLOBE being very well represented at the kindergarten level of weather and climate, which combines both physical science and earth science DCIs. I'm just giving you a couple minutes to take a look at this. And we're going to switch gears. So now that we've taken a look at the overview and detailed matches to the student performance expectations, let's look at the other half of our connections document, the relationships between GLOBE implementation and the next generation science standard practices. During our workshop, all of our teams really struggled to evaluate the protocols in relation to NGSS. And it really became apparent that our alignment document would need to address the nature of the protocols themselves. The protocols in GLOBE are not designed to stand alone, and each protocol is instructions for data collection along with some background information, the information about how scientists use the data, and some ideas about how students could analyze the data themselves. But the protocols are not full student investigations. GLOBE provides the freedom for each individual class to decide which protocols they're going to put together to do their own investigations. And that's something that in a one-to-one resource match of this single protocol to this single student performance expectation, we really couldn't incorporate it into the match in that way. However, GLOBE Teacher's Guide, GLOBE teachers guide their students through the use of protocols that fit into their curriculum and then engage their students in asking questions about observations they make while collecting data. And then finally, they work with their students to develop their own investigations. This is called the GLOBE model for student science research. And it has in the past been a much more text-based rather than right now you're looking at the diagram version of it. It has in the past been a much more text-based version, but all of us in our original GLOBE workshops dealt with some kind of a version of how we get from protocol to having students really design investigations. And this iteration of it, this visualization, really helps us visualize how GLOBE work gets done and how students get from protocols to their own investigations. It really provides a structure for the use of the protocols. First, to provide students with experiences making observations of the natural world. And at that point, when a student is just doing the protocol the first couple of times, they're really collecting data for GLOBE. But we all know that once someone begins making observations, questions follow. And suddenly, when you're out with your students collecting data, you hear things like, I didn't expect the grass to be warmer than the concrete. Or wait, there's 5 types of clouds? How can there be 5 types of clouds in the sky at the same time? Or my very favorite one is, that's weird. And that's when the GLOBE model for student science research provides the structure for GLOBE protocols to become a tool for students to develop their own investigations. And as they do, they move into many, but maybe not all of the pathways that are in this model. They often collaborate with classmates, with GLOBE and other scientists, and with GLOBE students from other schools in order to complete their investigations. So as we were struggling to connect the protocols to the student performance expectations, one of the things we wondered is what would it look like if we mapped the 8 practices of science and engineering from NGSS onto the GLOBE MSSR. And from now on, I'm going to call the model for student science research the MSSR. And we didn't just want to look at where the 8 practices overlapped. We really wanted to look at how the next generation science standards progressions for each practice, for each grade level, fit onto the MSSR. So we could visualize the difference between what a 2nd grader and a 10th grader following the MSSR might look like. And before I show you the map of what that looks like, so when we took this diagram and put the practices onto it, I'm just going to show you those progressions. So in addition to the maps, we have tables of the progressions. And these come from Appendix F of the Next Generation Science Standards. And in that appendix, it provides an overview of what each practice is and a description of the progression in the development of that practice from kindergarten through 12th grade. So we began by putting together tables with these progression bullets. So here in 2nd grade, the first progression bullet for analyzing and interpreting data is that students will record information, observations, thoughts, and ideas. The second is that they'll use and share pictures, drawings, or writings of observations. We took all of those bullets and we mapped them onto the MSSR. And we created this table that indicates which of these bullets we were able to map. And you can see we mapped all of them, but we didn't actually, for practice 4, analyzing data from tests of an object or a tool to determine if it works as intended, didn't map onto the GLOBE MSSR. So they didn't all map. When we put all of the connections together, this was the result. And as you can see, it's a little bit complex. And it's a little bit daunting at first. In this diagram, the red boxes are the K2 practice statements. And those inside the GLOBE MSSR are the collaborative practice statements. And those outside could be individual or collaborative. And this is all of the K2 practices mapped onto a single page. One of the things that we provide in the PDF is actually 9 versions, a separate page for each practice that would show just that practice's points mapped onto the MSSR, and then this version which has all 8 mapped onto the same. We hope that eventually we'll be able to integrate this into the GLOBE website so that it's kind of an interactive and you could turn on and off the practices that you're interested in engaging your students in and turn on and off grades, maybe even see where different grades overlap in the same practice. But the 9 maps that we provide in the document at least make it so that you don't need to look at all of the practices at once. So here I've zoomed in onto just a portion of the diagram. At all the grade levels, the MSSR provides students with opportunities to engage in all of the practices of science and engineering save one. We identified no matches between the MSSR and developing and using models. Certainly, GLOBE data can be used to develop a model about how parts of the Earth system work together, but the process for how to build those models is not built into how we do GLOBE. That doesn't mean that GLOBE doesn't address models at all. There are several activities and some protocols where identified individual matches to a specific student performance expectation are identified. So as states begin to adopt and implement NGSS, these diagrams may serve as a starting point to identify how GLOBE investigations can provide students with experiences doing the practices of the next generation science standards. And before we open up for questions, I'd like to talk about some of the other products that came out of our 2.5-day workshop. There are a couple of products that the team has given to GLOBE, but that we didn't put into the connections between the GLOBE program and Next Generation Science Standards document. For example, the team identified 106 different GLOBE assessment matches. A match for assessment means that doing the activity or protocol would result in students demonstrating mastery of at least 2 of the 3 dimensions within that student performance expectation. And so what we said is, if while you were doing that activity or while you were doing an investigation in which students collected data from that protocol, if it meant that the students were engaged in the practice of that student performance expectation and the disciplinary core idea, or the disciplinary core idea and the cross-cutting concept, or all 3, that means that that activity would be really ripe to be selected as an assessment for that standard, as opposed to being something that you'd use in a class to prepare students to get ready for the standard. You could actually use it as a part of the test. However, those are potential matches. A little bit of work would need to be done in order to prepare them to actually be used as assessments. And so we're providing the list of these matches to GLOBE, and that could be a future project that GLOBE will undertake, or maybe that a partnership in GLOBE will undertake. The other thing that we did is we provided a match-no match list for all grade levels for GLOBE. So if there were a few GLOBE resources that didn't get matched to any of the student performance expectations, and that may be because that content is no longer in our standards because our standards are deeper and not as wide. It may be because the GLOBE resource was identified for a higher grade than where that content is currently, it has been placed in Next Generation Science Standards. And there are other cases where there was a match, but the match was only for some of the grades in which the GLOBE resource is listed as appropriate for. So this list may be used by GLOBE to have future workshops where we might adapt activities up and down, or change activities a little bit so that they fit the DCIs a little bit better. And then the other thing that our teams, most of our teams did, is they selected a student performance expectation or 2 in their section that they became the experts of, where there were lots of matches to GLOBE. And they built a draft unit plan for those highly covered student performance expectations. And those will be released at a future date as basically a separate document that can be used by teachers, model units that might fit a specific set of student performance expectations. So that is a first look at GLOBE and the Next Generation Science Standards. We will open up the floor to questions now, and I'm going to have to close the PowerPoint because while I'm sharing, I cannot see the chat window at all. All right, so let's open the floor to questions.
curious if anybody that's attending this webinar, especially if you participated, has any kind of feedback or being part of the process, wants to share what that process was like for you and what it looks like to see this final document and product.
No, there's a couple of our team on. Oh, Dorian, can you maybe type your answer?
Oh, sorry, Dorian.
Or
I
Kristen,
will.
If you want to you know
Yeah.
what? We might have had some questions.
That's okay.
Too.
No worries.
Don't all jump in at once.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
If you'd like me to
Yes.
unmute. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, this is Dorian.
Great.
And I just want, yep, I was a part of the process, and I will say that it's really amazing to see these charts and forms and the incredible concept map that's been put together as a result of pulling in everybody's responses. So that's just amazing to see.
Oh, thanks. They worked so hard over those 2.5 days. There was one night where I didn't even take them home until about 9:30.
I remember I was there. It was the death march. But it was a lot of fun. You took good care of us. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh, great.
Aw, thanks, Dorian.
So we'll use our teacher wait time and wait a little bit longer for any questions, and hearing either answer them or hearing none, do the closing.
Again, raise your hand in the chat room if you'd like me to unmute you so you can talk. And I'm also curious if anybody here has anything that they'd like to share as far as how they're going to use this moving forward too.
I think while we're waiting, one of the things that I'll add is we'll talk more about this when we do a presentation later today for other curriculum programs that want to do this kind of the same thing that we're doing. One of the things we didn't do was match each activity to protocol or to practice, DCI, and cross-cutting concepts separately. And that was really we did that with intention. However, in the database that Globe has, for every student performance expectation that an activity has been added to, you can pull out the practice, the DCI, and the cross-cutting concepts. So we will be able to, as long as there's resources to do it, add Globe connections to things like, now help me with the name of the one that we were thinking of, Kristen. I want to say Lightwave. That's the web resource. Databases that connect to NGSS, the NASA Wavelength.
Oh, NASA Wavelength. And we actually have,
so we have
the people on
that information to make those connections. However, the just matching to those three things, we didn't think that we would get a very good representative list of activities that you would want to use in the classroom to prepare to be tested or demonstrate mastery of those student performance expectations. That when you match to each of the individual things and then search, what you really get is assessment activities.
Great, thanks. And I'm glad you mentioned NASA Wavelengths. We have the folks from NASA Wavelength on this call right now, so I'm glad you mentioned that also. And please feel free to chime in, Teresa, or anyone else from that.
So
we have a couple from, I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm doing your job.
We have a question from Bob. How has your process been endorsed as an effective matching process by NGSS itself? Marcy?
So the answer is, at this time, not yet. We did have a member of the original writing team in our team, so we got some assistance with that. And we also started way ahead of the game. We started far before Achieve had developed the EQUIP rubric. I think for a program like Globe, where each resource is also dependent upon the other elements of the program, our match will work very well. For some other programs, it might work better to do the other way. But it will be interesting to see how NGSS responds to our connections. Did you want me to answer the other question about the protocols adapted?
Yes, please.
So the next question was, were there any protocols adapted in order to match them to the performance expectations? And no, we didn't do that. That was actually intentionally not a part of our project. However, that no match list provides, now we really have information that we might need to be able to say, oh my goodness, this one protocol or this one activity is a fantastic activity and we don't see any matches. What do we need to do to adapt it? So we were looking at where are the matches in Globe as it exists today, but we created some resources that could be used to see where Globe will go in the future.
Great. Thanks, Marcy. We have a comment from Teresa Schwerin. Thanks for the comment on wavelength. We have started taking items with NGSS, and this is helpful info. The comment about individual activities might not address NGSS, but when you bundle them together, it's really good. List building and wavelength can help with this. We're also looking at how we display, search, and browse. Nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh,
Marcy, do you want to
that's
speak to that?
fantastic. And yeah, I think the list building and the bundling, that's another reason why we asked the teams to create those draft units. And then hopefully we'll have a place where, well, we do. With the new Globe website released a year and a half ago, in the forums area we have sections where teachers can upload their own description of how they use things. And so we'll have a section where we can all contribute our different unit plans as well. But if we can put that into wavelengths and make it available to a wider audience, that is all the better.
We have a few more minutes if anyone else would like to be unmuted to be able to talk, or if you have any additional comments or questions.
Yeah, and Teresa, I think that, so Teresa said, we have Globe activities and wavelengths. We'd love to work with you to get some lists started. I think the database that we gave to Globe might even be able to be imported as opposed to having someone physically type each thing in. Hopefully that will be really nice. One of the other outcomes of this project that we didn't know was going to be an outcome is that we created a table of those 214 Globe resources. There was no single document that listed every single Globe resource that there was. There was one list of things that are in the teacher's guide and different list of things that were in the elementary Globe and some things that were on no list whatsoever. So the beginning of our project, while we were getting our team ready, we also, in my office, had a bunch of people, and Kristen helped a whole lot with this too, just making lists of what Globe was. And even in our workshop, we had a session specifically on the web because we knew there were some things that people who came to the workshop said, well, I use this part of Globe, and it wasn't on our list yet. So if there aren't any other questions, I do have a couple of other slides.
Sure, go for it. Martha also says she's anxious to see the draft unit plans to see where and how this might look with instruction. Yes, we'll be sure to put that up on the website also. It's a really helpful comment.
Okay, so questions. And then before we leave, I wanted to acknowledge the work and dedication of the Globe Next Generation Science Standards Workshop team. These individuals worked from early in the morning until late at night with very little sleep, although they did have some great food. And they did all that in order to bring the Globe NGSS alignment to life. So here is our team members. And we should also take another moment to acknowledge that this project is funded by the National Science Foundation and supported by the Globe Program, Michigan RESA, and the Iowa Academy of Science. Again, thank you. And for more information, to access the Globe Program resources, visit the Globe website at www.globe.gov. And to get a download of the connections between the Globe program and the Next Generation Science Standards, go to the Teaching and Learning section and then Learning Standards.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcy. And thank you to each of you for participating today. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes if you have any more questions or anything else you'd like to follow up with. Marcy, fantastic webinar and great job leading this entire project. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Nice to see how it's shaped up. Thank you.
And at the hour, we'll start our next webinar, which is going to be about how trainers and partners, an introduction to this to trainers and partners, and then some discussion of how we can, what we should do in our workshops.
Yes, Teresa, the next webinar is on the same URL and telecon number. We might still be in the same room. I have to figure that part out, but it's the same call-in number.